You know that feeling when you're standing in a crowded room, like maybe a church lobby,
Oh, okay.
and you've just hugged, I don't know, 3 different people, you've laughed, you've done the small talk, maybe nodded along to a conversation about the sermon.
Right, doing the whole Sunday routine.
Exactly. But then you walk out to your car and your soul just feels, it feels completely unopened.
Yeah, that is it's honestly a haunting realization
Mm-hmm.
because you spend an entire morning surrounded by people, but you walk away knowing you weren't actually, with anyone.
Yes.
It's this incredibly effective camouflage. We stay active, we serve on teams, we smile, but we use the crowd to keep everyone at arm's length.
It really is a modern epidemic, right? Like this well-dressed spiritual distance. We're
Hmm.
so skilled at faking connection without ever letting our deeper lives show. And breaking through that distance is exactly what we are exploring today. We are diving into Pastor Florin's message. Joy, some sacred moments are meant to be shared closely, which was taught at Agape Community Church. We've got the pastor's research notes, the sermon manuscripts, and all the theological deep dives right here.
And just to give you, the listener, a quick roadmap, this deep dive is actually just one piece of a three-part approach to this message. So first, you have the live Sunday sermon, which is shaped for the gathered church.
Right, for the room.
Exactly. Then second, there's the fuller midweek video on the Agape YouTube channel where you can really slow down and study. And third, you have this audio deep dive, which feeds right into the church's apprenticeship groups, where we actually process this in community.
Because following Jesus isn't just, passive belief, it's an apprenticeship. It takes real practice. We see this in Matthew 6.33, like, followers of Jesus are adopted into God's family and his kingdom, and we're called to seek that kingdom first.
Yeah, everything we think, say, and do is built on that.
Right. And if you want to explore those beliefs or find some tools for the journey, you can head over to agapechurch.life. Oh, and real quick, the structure of this discussion was assisted by AI, but it was fully reviewed by Pastor Florin to make sure it captures the exact pastoral heart and theology of his message.
So let's get right into the text. The primary passage today is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, verses 28 through 36.
We'll be quoting the NIV, but, use whatever version you have. Actually, do this. Hit pause right now, grab your Bible, read Luke 9.28 through 36, and then hit play so we can unpack it together.
We'll be right here.
Okay, so now that you have the story fresh, we really need to talk about the context. Because when people casually say mountaintop experience, they usually mean like an escape, right?
For sure, like a spiritual vacation.
Exactly, a break from the grind. But looking at the timeline here, this is anything but a vacation. So what does this actually say about God? Like, his timing here is wild.
It really is. Luke gives us this very specific time marker.
Yeah.
He says this happens about 8 days after Jesus said this.
Right.
So to understand what God is doing on this mountain, you have to look at what Jesus just said. Literally a week prior, Jesus explicitly predicts his own suffering, his rejection, and his death in Jerusalem.
Wow.
He tells his disciples that following him means taking up their cross. So this moment of dazzling glory, it happens right as the shadow of the cross is falling over them.
That totally shifts how we view God's character in this moment. It's like getting a really heavy medical diagnosis, but then having this profoundly beautiful family dinner right after. The joy doesn't cancel out the sorrow.
No, not at all.
It gives you the anchor to survive it. It's like looking at an ordinary painting and suddenly someone flips on a black light. You realize there are glowing, hidden layers there the entire time. You just needed the right light to see them.
That's a great way to put it. God didn't give them this experience to distract them. He turned on the black light so they would know exactly who was walking to that cross. And that completely reframes God's provision. Well, he doesn't give this glimpse of glory to help them escape reality. He provides a holy moment of joy to strengthen them for reality. Sometimes the deepest joy doesn't come after the road gets easier. It comes because God knows the valley you're about to walk into, and he fortifies you first.
Man, that's powerful. But wait, there's a detail here that feels, I don't know, kind of out of place if they're just prepping for a tragedy. Moses and Elijah show up, right?
Right, in glorious splendor.
And they start talking to Jesus about his departure. Now, my Bible says departure, but looking at Pastor Florin's research notes, the actual Greek word Luke uses is exodos.
Yes?
And if I'm a first century person hearing Exodus, I'm not thinking about a tragic victim walking to an execution. I'm thinking about Moses parting the Red Sea.
Exactly. You're thinking about a grand escape from slavery. Luke is brilliant for including that specific word. He's actually the only gospel writer who tells us the topic of their conversation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. By using Exodus, he pulls the whole redemptive history of Israel right onto that mountain peak. Jesus isn't going to Jerusalem to just, endure a political assassination.
She's executing a rescue mission.
A cosmic rescue mission. Just like Moses led Israel out of the physical chains of Egypt, Jesus is stepping into the cross to break the chains of sin, death, and spiritual darkness for all of humanity.
So the cross isn't an interruption.
Not at all. It's the epicenter. Heaven isn't trying to spare Jesus from his mission. Heaven is actively attending to it.
Okay, so we have this massive cosmic reality unfolding. But then if we ask question 2, what does this reveal about humanity? We just have to look at the guys Jesus brought with him, Peter, James, and John, and they are completely failing to meet the moment.
Yeah, our human condition is on full display here. What are they doing while the glory of heaven is literally breaking open? They're fast asleep.
Snoring through a miracle.
Luke actually says they were very sleepy, and when they finally do wake up and see this blinding light and these ancient prophets, they are absolutely terrified.
Right. And Peter just starts babbling. He's like, Master, it's good for us to be here. Let's build 3 shelters, one for you, Moses, and Elijah. And I love how Luke throws in that little editorial note. He's like, he did not know what he was saying.
Yeah, Mark's gospel is even blunter.
Yeah.
Mark basically says Peter only started talking because he was too terrified to know what else to do. These aren't like stoic religious professionals. They are tired, frail men who wake up into a supernatural moment that completely overloads their brains.
Which, inevitably brings up a major pushback from critics. You hear this all the time. If these guys were this terrified and literally babbling nonsense, how can we possibly trust their memories of the event?
Sure.
Critics love pointing out the discrepancies. Like, Mark says it happened after 6 days. Luke says about 8 days. Or the exact wording of the voice from the cloud changes depending on the gospel. Doesn't that prove the text is flawed? Like, their memories must be unreliable.
It's a fair question, but if you look at the cognitive psychology and memory research in the pastor's notes, it actually proves the opposite.
Wait, really?
Yeah. High trauma or high awe events create what neurologists call flashbulb memories. When you are thrust into sheer terror or overwhelming awe, your amygdala floods your brain with chemicals.
Right, like a survival mechanism. Your brain is trying to record the most critical stuff to keep you alive.
Exactly. And this creates focal enhancement, the core gist of the event. So the blinding light, the sudden cloud, the terrifying voice that is permanently seared into the hippocampus, it's burned in. But the edges of the memory...
The exact number of days.
Exactly. The sequence of days leading up to it or the exact verbatim phrasing of a sentence, those peripheral details remain flexible when you recall them years later. So saying about 8 days versus 6 days isn't a structural error. It's actually a hallmark of genuine, uncolluded human eyewitness testimony.
Wow, okay. So it's a feature, not a bug. If all 3 Gospels had the exact same wording down to the syllable, it would look like they just copied off each other's test papers.
Precisely. And regarding the wording of the voice from the cloud, there's a profound theological reason for the differences. The gospel writers are theologians, not court stenographers, right? Right. In Matthew and Mark, the Father calls Jesus, my beloved Son. But in Luke, the earliest manuscripts read, this is my Son whom I have chosen, or my chosen one.
I want to pause on that because that is huge. If I'm a first-century Jewish person reading Luke, the phrase chosen one rings a very specific bell. That points directly back to Isaiah, specifically Isaiah 42, which outlines the suffering servant.
Yes, the suffering servant is God's chosen one.
And we have to remember how counterintuitive that was for them. They were expecting a conquering military king, someone to ride in, kick out the Romans, restore the throne. The idea of a king who achieves victory by being crushed by suffering, that was practically an oxymoron.
Exactly. So by using chosen one, Luke isn't making a transcription error. He's deliberately linking the glowing king on the mountain with the bleeding servant who's about to walk into Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's a beautifully faceted diamond of theology.
I love that. Human frailty and limited vocabulary don't cancel out divine revelation. God actually entrusts the greatest mysteries of the kingdom to sleepy, terrified people.
He really does. But, even sleepy, terrified people
Hmm.
have to figure out how to respond when the cloud rolls in. The disciples are overwhelmed, trying to manage this moment that is way too big for them, and then God cuts right through the chaos.
Yeah, the voice from the cloud gives a single direct command. This is my son, whom I have chosen. Listen to him.
And that answers our third question. What do we need to believe, obey, or turn away from? Because this is the ultimate pivot point. Think about what Peter was trying to do with those shelters.
He was trying to domesticate it.
Yes, he wanted to preserve the atmosphere, keep the retreat going, just stay on the mountain where things were clear. The Father's command cuts through that. It tells us to turn away from trying to control our spiritual experiences. Stop trying to build a shelter for the divine, and simply obey Jesus. Listen to him.
When I look at Peter scrambling to build those shelters, it honestly feels like a textbook example of spiritual camouflage.
Oh, absolutely. How do you mean?
Well, when you're faced with the sheer terrifying awe of God, the most vulnerable thing you can do is just stand there in silence and listen. But vulnerability is scary.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Right. So instead of listening, we do religious stuff, we build shelters, we organize a committee. Today, we volunteer for 3 different ministry teams, we run the bake sale, we smile in the lobby, and we keep everyone, including God, at arm's length. We use well-dressed spiritual distance to avoid the vulnerability of truly listening to Jesus.
Because it's easy to listen when Jesus comforts us. It's terrifying when he exposes the old self we are desperately trying to keep alive.
Exactly.
That is a profound connection, and it leads directly to the core example we need to hold on to here, our fourth question. Why did Jesus only bring 3 friends up the mountain?
That's a great question, because people read that and get offended. They think, oh, Jesus had a VIP club. He played favorites.
But it's not a clique. It is a vital model for human flourishing. There is this deeply ingrained lie in our culture that all relationships have to exist at the exact same depth. We have hundreds of followers on social media and assume we are connected.
But we're not.
No. And Jesus provides a radically different model. He loved the multitudes. He fed them, healed them, taught them, but he did not process his deepest experiences with them.
Because the human brain literally cannot process awe or suffering in a crowd.
Exactly. Deep grief cannot be processed at crowd distance. Think about the Garden of Gethsemane. He only takes those same 3 men. And deep joy can't be processed in a crowd either. The vulnerable work of apprenticeship to Jesus requires a level of safety that a crowd just fundamentally cannot provide.
Because if you're going to confess a deep sin or share a moment where you felt God's presence, you can't do that with someone who's just going to offer a cheap cliche, right? You need people who will hold the weight of it with you.
The warning here is against the isolation of our modern age. Jesus models that some sacred moments are meant to be shared closely. If the incarnate Son of God required close companions for his highest joys and deepest sorrows, how much more do we?
Which brings us to the descent, coming down the mountain. We have to translate this theology into, our Tuesday mornings. Which brings up our final question. Who can we talk with or pray for in light of this?
Knowledge is only transformative when it's applied. If you are that person we talked about at the beginning, standing in the lobby, hugging people, but completely unopened, you have to do some spiritual surgery.
You have to stop confusing attendance with shared life. You can attend a gathering for 20 years and never actually share your life with anyone.
So true. You have to ask the Lord to show you where you are hiding behind spiritual camouflage. And you have to stop waiting for perfect spiritual friends to just drop out of the sky.
They don't exist.
Look at the text. Peter, James, and John fell asleep on the job and babbled nonsense. They were profoundly flawed. Yet Jesus still chose them as his closest friends. Ask the Holy Spirit to provide 1 or 2 spiritually trustworthy companions, people you can walk honestly with.
But there's a flip side to that, right? It's not just about finding those people. You have to look in the mirror and ask God, to whom am I becoming that kind of companion?
That is the real crucible of apprenticeship. Are you the kind of friend who can hear someone's joy without getting envious? Can you sit in the ashes of someone's sorrow without rushing to fix it with a Bible verse?
Yeah. Can you humble yourself to listen when a close friend says, I think you're drifting right now and I love you too much to leave you there? That is what true spiritual friendship looks like. It helps people obey Jesus when the mountaintop is dazzling and when the valley is pitch black.
It's a high calling,
Hmm.
but it is the very fabric of the kingdom of God.
We want to genuinely thank you for making the time to listen, study, and participate in this apprenticeship journey with us today. Your desire to seek first the kingdom and dig past the surface really makes this community rich. We deeply value you being here.
And as you go about your week, We want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over, something to chew on as you process Luke 9.
Think about this. When that blazing glory shone on the mountain, did the transfiguration actually change anything about Jesus' physical nature in that moment? Like, did he suddenly become something different? Or did the Father simply pull back the veil and temporarily change the disciples' eyes so they could finally see the cosmic reality that was already standing right in front of them?
Wow. It makes you wonder how much glory is walking right past us every single day just because our eyes haven't been open to see it.
So the next time you're standing in that crowded church lobby, getting ready to walk to your car feeling lonely, maybe take a second look. The glory of God and the deep companionship you've been looking for might just be hidden right in front of you. It just takes a soul willing to take off the camouflage.
Keep seeking his kingdom. Keep listening to him.
We'll see you next time.